As long as we continue to believe that the purpose of life is to go shopping, the idea that we could restore these systems is crazy, because that's the cause of the degradation, because we have valued the products which are extracted from functional ecosystems higher than the functional ecosystems themselves.
Welcome to Facing Future. Today we're delighted to welcome John D. Liu. He's a filmmaker whose film Hope in a Changing Climate we're going to look at some parts of, and he's also the founder of the Ecosystem Restoration Camp movement, which has projects, over 100 projects around the world. We're also welcoming Dr. Sheila Laffey, who is an environmental filmmaker, a member of our team, and also teaches film studies at Santa Monica College. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
A quarter of the world's land has been degraded. The good news is that it can be restored, and that is what John and his teams are doing around the world. It's really exciting to realize that that immense amount of land, if restored, could sequester enough carbon to take us back to safe levels of CO2. Wow.
So I was given lots of opportunities to study around the world and go everywhere and look at ecosystems. And what I found was that actually we can restore large-scale degraded ecosystems, and that this is more important than these other secondary systems that we've been caught up in. So now we have to recognize what is fundamental and essential for life. It's the difference between what we need and what we want. That's kind of where I got to.
So John, could you talk a little bit more about the eco camps, eco restoration camps? I understand that you're actually at one now, you're kind of partly living at one, and how they are growing into a movement. And how would somebody connect with them? How would they participate?
The camps are all autonomous, self-organizing, and self-governing. So the community has to come together, has to have some sort of political or legal entity that can run a camp, and that all the people in the community in the camp agree to. So it's participatory and self-governing. And then they begin to study what is their issue, because in different, or how many multiple issues do they have. So some of the places, Somalia or Egypt and so on, the situation's quite grim. But once they get started, then they have people, and people have minds, and people have hands, and then if they can get the knowledge and the tools necessary to work on the hydrological cycle in the soil and the vegetation, that's what they can do. And when they do that, if they also have feed everybody with the highest quality organic and biodynamic food, and they have music and study together and work together, then they're going to have a great time. And so that's the lowest cost and the highest impact we can possibly have. And if it takes off like this and have exponential growth, then what happens is that it just sweeps around the world. And everybody who does this, their landscapes, their communities, their families are more resilient and more sustainable, and they're sharing. And when they get into this place where they're on knowledge-driven, evidence-based work that's meaningful for themselves and their communities and for the entire planet, then they're really in a new place. They're leaving behind their old behaviors, which were destructive. And so new camps, more camps, there could be hundreds of thousands or millions of camps. Essentially, I wrote an essay. It's called Earth Restoration Peace Camps. It was published in Permaculture magazine. But what was really funny was I kept having these dreams. I was going camping, and this is after 20 plus years of documenting large-scale ecosystem restorations, because in the beginning I just thought, well, you have to do this at giant scale and you need hundreds of millions of dollars and power and land and so on. Then I looked at the situation and I kind of like, we're going to fail, even though we know how to restore large-scale damaged ecosystems. The fact is we're looking at this from the top down, and we need to kind of look at this from the bottom up and to realize that we don't need individual scholarship as much as we need collective intelligence. That if we as a species can act on a planetary scale, there's no way we can fail to restore these natural systems. We know enough to do this. But as long as we continue to believe that the purpose of life is to go shopping, then the idea that we could restore these systems is crazy, because that's the cause of the degradation, because we have valued the products which are extracted from functional ecosystems higher than the functional ecosystems themselves.
That is so critical. Just that one statement, we're ignoring the earth and we're buying all these stupid products that we've turned it into. And meanwhile, the essential life support is being lost.
But I think what we really have to understand is that we can restore these systems. And for me, it was studying evolution and evolutionary succession and realizing that when the Earth formed from stardust, coalescing into a planet traveling around the sun, this was quite a long time ago, and human beings did not have a role in that particular period of prehistory, because we hadn't gotten to the point where we were literate and could communicate between generations and understand that we're going to die. Then you look at the period of human behavior and what have we done with wars and with our so-called development. We've created persistent organic pollutants, which are chemicals which never go away, which are toxic and deadly, and it's ridiculous. We've disrupted and desertified and dehydrated vast areas of the planet. And we're changing the climate. We're having biodiversity loss. So we're doing all these things, and we want stuff. But actually what we need is functional ecosystems. And so the value of functional ecosystems is higher than the stuff. But we haven't treated it that way. And the result of that is that we are creating a perverse incentive to degrade the natural ecosystems. So if we value collectively as a species the primary systems, the functional ecosystems, the ability to maintain the hydrological cycle or soil fertility or biodiversity, then we have abundance as opposed to scarcity. Then we have the ability to have full employment and food security, as well as ecological functionality, because our work is not degrading the earth support systems. Our work is to steward and maintain the functional ecosystems.
Well, we have these droughts and we have floods. We have enormous storms, and then we have, enormous heat. Because the hydrological cycle is not understood. So, I loved in your work that you were really working with the hydrological cycles, plant things, plant trees, plant everything, and the moisture comes back to the soil and the rain comes back.
Almost miraculously, a clear flowing stream has emerged where once there was a muddy trickle.
How is it that it's possible for you to get the stream to flow throughout the year?
It is because of the vegetation cover, which has been regenerating on this mountain. This water is maintained in the landscape because as soon as rain falls on the canopy on this vegetation, that rain then infiltrated gradually into the ground, ending up with this steady flow of this river. I'm amazed, as short as 5 years, 6 years, you get clean water like this, provided you work hard for restoring this degraded landscape.
I would say that all of our cultures basically are experiments. So each culture is seeking to understand what is the meaning of life, and each individual is seeking to understand the meaning of life before they die. So what I've been looking at is that if we focus on what works and what is functional in ecosystems, we get to see and experience in our lives the beauty of being alive. And if we put the value into stuff, then we're squabbling over meaningless materialism that ends up on the junk pile anyway, and it'll just be ruins for future generations to say, what were they doing?
Well, waste is a human invention. Nature doesn't really have waste. One of the things we waste are people. So I really was interested in your project in jails, where instead of having people, do industrial things or sit around, people put in land, grow food. This restores not only the land, but also it brings those people who've never really experienced that connection to nature, it heals them.
Well, it puts them on another track. I mean, the problems that we have are that the socialization that we're experiencing from the societies are built on past precedents. So we see this now in wars, we see this in scarcity, we see this in domination of one group over another, or the idea that some people are deserving of everything and others are nothing, But if you're alive, you're a representation of all life since the beginning of time. It can't be any other way. So your rights are inherent in your being. And the idea that there should be a few billionaires, or maybe we're going to have trillionaires soon, who knows, and that the majority of people are nothing, and can die in the street while there's vast wealth being accumulated to individuals is ridiculous. So now's the moment where we have the chance to say, there's a completely different purpose, which is to restore the ecological function and ensure that human civilization can survive, and not just human civilization, but all life.
Everything else is going with us.
And so the diversity of the places where these eco-restoration camps are is very impressive. I mean, Uganda, and I think you're going to Egypt shortly, and there's a restoration camp at the Hollywood sign, right?
Yeah.
Near where I live. It's called the Birdhouse, apparently. And there's
you must go there. You'll enjoy.
Yeah.
That's
and there are some coming up. I mean, on the schedule that you have, there's the Camp Earth Connection, 40 acres of tropical forest in the Yucatan in Mexico. There's Eco Camp Coyote near Santa Cruz in August, and then there's Spain, South Africa in the fall. I mean, this is burgeoning. So
Yeah.
a place like Uganda, when you're, talk about almost people who are refugees and where, the land needs to be restored. Could you give a couple of more concrete examples of that?
This is something that I've known for a very long time, but I've also observed as a journalist. Like, if you go to crisis places and you actually can't really help much, it's a role, you have a role to play. But many of the journalists are observing, and they're not actually interacting in these events. They're observing them and reporting on them. But at some point, if you go to these places where there are crises, you need to be able to do something, or you become actually a problem so that other people have to take care of you because you went there. And it can be dangerous. And, so to have the courage and the ability to do something about that, I think that's the critical point. So I was always thinking, well, that's a huge problem that has to be dealt with. but what can I really do? And I don't want to go there into these situations and make the situation worse. What I found was that actually the only way to do this is for everybody to work together. So if you try to have like a bureaucracy that's trying to take care of hundreds of thousands of refugees, well, that's a disaster. You know, I mean, what do you know about how to deal with people who are living at the, you know, with no money trying to survive? So I've come to the conclusion that we have to we have to engage those communities, and that's what's happening in Uganda. The oldest refugee camp in East Africa is in northern Uganda. The BBC did a report on it, and they said, if you're going to be a refugee, this is the best place to be a refugee. So essentially, they can start to teach how a community can stand up, restore the soils, restore the water cycle, restore the biodiversity and the vegetation. And in doing that, become not just refugees, but become like the most important people on the planet. So it's very similar, going back to these kinds of Christian ideas that, you know, the last shall be first and the meek will inherit the earth. And so that sounds right to me, and that they're in need. So this also talks to the difference between need and want. So like they're in need, so they need to do something, and we need to help them, and they are us. I mean, we there is no us and them, there's just us, and some of us are practically naked at the edges of large degraded ecosystems. So what could we do? And that's where the camp movement comes in. We can make it the technical understanding possible. We're working on things like Eco Oasis with Dr. John Todd, designing these kinds of things. And what we see is that you can create a microclimate. And when you create a microclimate, if you use it like an edge system, you can enlarge over areas. And that lowers the surface temperatures, which holds moisture closer to the earth and reduces the impact from climate changes.
In these camps, I think the people own some of the camps. It's people contribute a certain amount of money. Can you explain to people how it could work for them to support these camps, and if they did join them, what would happen?
Well, first I wrote that essay, and I wrote that essay because I was having these dreams that people were going to go camping and fix the earth. My father had always told me that I was a dreamer, you know, and that I should get a job and act normal and so on. I was like thinking, oh, this is a dream. I've been making films about restoration. Nobody seems to be listening. So why would I think that they're going to go camping? But I wrote the essay because I kept having the dream, and I wanted to get the dream out of my mind. And then when I did, tens of thousands of people said, well, we want that, you know, and or some even said, we're having the same dream. And so we said, okay, well, how would we do that? Are we going to rely on the existing status quo, the people who think that they are in control of everything? Well, that just gives them the power and takes away our own sovereignty. So what if we did it ourselves? And we said, well, like if everybody shares, there'll be something, you know, we can do something. So we said, well, who would share? And we found that people would give 10 euros per month. And when 1,000 people agreed to do that, then we had to start a foundation. So that was how it started. And then, some people give lots more if they have lots more, and some people give less if they have nothing, or some people don't give anything and they just work in camps. I've been recommending three things primarily now, because if the situation is truly awful and there are wars and storms and biodiversity loss and famine and fires and floods and all this stuff, and we're seeing it, it's actually coming to us. It's coming to us.
It's happening.
Yeah, it's happening. So the best case for each of these camps is to have a central kitchen that can feed everybody. And at the same time, it would be good if you can negotiate directly with the producers for the best organic and biodynamic food. And you feed everybody who's hungry without thinking of it like a business. The community says everyone in our community is going to be healthy and fed. No one will go hungry. That's going to be the cheapest and the most effective way to make sure everybody's fed. And then at the same time, that allows you to have an influence on the direction that agriculture is going. So you're stopping to take industrial and chemical agriculture. You're taking organic and biodynamic food from the producers. So the producers get the highest price that they're going to be able to get because the community negotiates with them. They have no need to interact with predatory wholesale or retail grocers. And then at the other side, the community, the people, the consumers get the highest quality and the lowest cost. And if everything goes well, then just play bingo and, you know, have a dance party and everybody eat together. But if there's fires or earthquakes or floods or whatever, then the community's taken care of. And also you can use these central kitchens to process all the surplus food. Then you can engage people. So it's also the way toward full employment and health. The other thing that I would say is creator spaces. Like we need to be able to do things like fix things. So you need machines, you need tools, and you need them to be very well maintained and curated. And we could teach everybody, all the young people are very fascinated with this. It's not the same as biology and horticulture, but a lot of people are in that space where they understand finite infrastructure because it all, you know, you have a screw that fits in this hole and, you know, the nut, it's all kind of, it's finite. So when you get to horticulture, it's infinite and it's complex and it's symbiotic, so it's multidimensional. It's harder. But if we make this infrastructure that's the bridge between human infrastructure and horticulture, we have a magic door we can walk through where we can all create microclimates artificially in a sense, and then stimulate the natural restoration outside of the microclimates and increase the macroclimate. So that's what I see. And then the third thing is cultural stages. I think we have to transmit culture from one generation to the next. And we're doing a very bad job of that now with the media. So we need to get, the media is selling, you know, zombie apocalypse and dystopia and corruption and hitmen, murders, and, you know, we don't need that. We need people to learn how to fall in love with the earth and fall in love with each other and to heal their broken hearts. I mean, what we're seeing is a lot of trauma everywhere. And so there's a way to fix that for the individual by fixing the landscapes too.
So John,
Clearly-
there's a way that people can plug in, right? I mean, from what I see on the schedule, some of these camps you can visit for a weekend. Other ones you're more locally committed to, you know, something nearby. So it seems there's really a wide diversity of ways to start getting engaged in it and see if your participation can grow from there.
Basically, everyone has to decide for themselves. So I came to an understanding long ago that, well, this was more important than the egos of various politicians or the desire for material possessions or any of that stuff. So the restoration of Earth systems is what human civilization needs to survive. And so it's beyond it's about value creation as opposed, so I've been also thinking about it as outcome instead of income. So like most of the people are thinking about income, but you can have income from all sorts of things which are not necessarily beneficial. So the understanding of economy as the circulation of currency is not logical. It's not real. There's a fundamental mistake in that reasoning. And so as long as that stays the same, and we believe that some ancient guy from the University of Chicago should be telling us what is of value in life, it's kind of ridiculous. We're into an absurd scenario.
That's why
And-
there is the genuine progress indicator, right? What's the real cost and what's the real benefit?
Well, I think we're just going to have to recognize it, and we're going to have to live the change we want to see on the earth. So if everybody gets together and works in their community to make sure everybody's safe and well fed, and the rivers and the streams flow and the springs come back and the vegetation goes as high as it possibly can, because that's where solar radiation is interrupted, and microclimates below the canopy are the basis of the cycling of water near the earth. So that's what we need. And when we can all be part of that, and it isn't like I own this, you own this, they own this. It's just like, no, we're living here for a few years and decades, and we're going to pass, and our bodies are going to become part of the soil, and that's the reality. So being in reality as opposed into virtual reality or fantasy is a kind of better thing.
Right. Well, we need to community, I guess, is the hope of the world in recovering our sense of who we are and what we share with each other, rather than selling each other stuff. What is wealth? Wealth is really comes from the earth and from our interactions with each other.
And John, I like a quote in one of your films where hope is a verb with our sleeves rolled up.
I think that was Brock Dolman at Occidental Arts and Ecology who said that. Yeah.
Hope in a Changing Climate, the film, a great
Your
film.
film, yeah.
Thank you so much, John, for being with us today.
Thanks,
And
John.
Sheila, thank you for co-hosting this. And we look forward to these restoration projects. And I hope people look at your website and start thinking about where they could put one of these projects in their own backyard.
Or join others.
Or join.
I think it's a good idea to maybe join with the people who are already doing it, and then when you know what's going on in those situations, then you create new ones.
Yes.
Well, let's hope it grows and grows. Thank you both.
Thank you again.
Thank you.